Welcome here to Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora on wakeupcalldt.com, your one-stop sports shop for this very special video Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, the first ever. So for those of you watching right now, you're part of history. On youtube.com/wakeupcalldt, which is the YouTube channel for Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, as well as right on wakeupcalldt.com. However you're watching, thank you so much for tuning in to this very special Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, centered on Tyler Ennis, the Syracuse Orange true freshman point guard phenom that made the decision to head to the NBA as opposed to go to his sophomore season with the Syracuse Orange, which is a heartbreaker for a lot of Syracuse fans. And when you look at Tyler Ennis by the numbers, you can tell why it hurts so much that people now are going to see him head to the 2014 NBA draft. And before I get to the numbers for Tyler Ennis, I want to give you my thoughts because I promised I would. And really with Tyler Ennis, I thought that when I go back to the first moments before he got to Syracuse and talking with Jim Boeheim, I had the opportunity to be with Jim in his office one-on-one just talking going into the 2013-2014 season. And he said to me, when I asked him about all the freshmen, the 5 freshmen coming in, Tyler Ennis, Tyler Roberson, Chinonso Oboko, Ron Patterson, and B.J. Johnson, when it came to Tyler Ennis, Boeheim looked at me and he said, I'm not worried about him. And I had never heard Jim Boeheim say something like that before about a true freshman, somebody who had never played the college game before. He said, I'm not worried about him. I said, why? He said, because he knew he was talented. He knew that he had the ability. There was just something about Tyler Ennis that was different. And then Syracuse fans got to see that difference in Tyler Ennis. The fact that in 34 games played in the 2013-2014 season, which includes the games for the NCAA tournament and also the ACC tournament game, Tyler Ennis was relevant, was a factor in 33 of 34 games. As a true freshman, there was only one game where he wasn't really a factor, that being the St. Francis game. And the reason why he wasn't a factor in the St. Francis game is that he ended the game really not having much to do with the outcome of the game. He wasn't one of those guys that came through toward the end for the team like he typically does. He had 2 points, 3 assists, but the game at the end was really Jeremy Grant and Michael Benajay, who both had layups, helped each other out, and then also C.J. Fair, who was good at the free throw line as well and did some things to help bring about that victory over St. Francis. So outside of the St. Francis game in the non-conference early on in the season, Tyler Ennis was a factor in every single Syracuse game played. 33 games of 34, a true freshman was a factor. In the first game against Cornell, he had no field goals, 1 point, which he got at the free throw line, but he had 7 assists, a block, and 2 steals in that game. Then against Fordham, he scored 16. Syracuse won by 15. And this is a theme that happened throughout the 2013-2014 season for Syracuse, is the fact that Tyler Ennis, when you look at his point total, and you look at how much Syracuse won by, would take his points away, and the game, more often than not, was completely different. That Fordham game was one of the examples. Then in Colgate, he scored 12. The team won by 19 in that game. Needed him to help out, obviously, and if you take his points away, team still wins by 7, but Tyler Ennis having a role in that game. Against Minnesota, he had 12, and the team won by 8. So they needed all 12 of his points. Baylor, he had 11. The team won by 7. Indiana, he scored 17. The team won by 17. So in a lot of these games, this theme of take Tyler Ennis out of it, and what would the team have looked like? They wouldn't have won as many games. And so many people at the end of the season want to focus on Tyler Ennis took a bad shot. After Dayton stepped out of bounds, and Syracuse got the ball, there's plenty of time on the clock. Why did he take that fadeaway jumper? And then at the end, he misses that three-point shot, which was a good look. It was actually a better look to me than his jump shot that he took beforehand. But that shot that he took, because it went in the basket, and then came back out. So it was a good look. It was a good shot. Do I agree with the jumper that he took with all the time left? No. But when you look at a true freshman, you expect 100 mistakes. Tyler Ennis has over 100 good plays and maybe 20 mistakes in the season, 30 mistakes in the season, but not your typical true freshman by any stretch of the imagination. So before you remember, and the thing is, it's the what you've done for me lately argument. That, yeah, okay, Dan, well, you're going down the line and saying Tyler Ennis did all these great things, but what did he do at the end? They would have never gotten to where they were to have 25-0 as their best start ever in the history of Syracuse Orange basketball, mind you. They wouldn't have won games that they won, including this Indiana game, without Tyler Ennis. And when Trevor Cooney went cold toward the end of the season, they would have never been in competition, even in games they lost, without Tyler Ennis. You go up against teams where Trevor Cooney's not hitting threes, and you don't have Tyler Ennis, instead of losing by 3, you lose by 20. You lose by 17. You lose by 15. It's an embarrassing loss as compared to a last-second, they missed the shot loss. Tyler Ennis has been so effective for Syracuse that his loss is definitely going to be felt on this team. And you look at the next game, Binghamton. This is a game where Tyler wasn't really needed because they won against Binghamton by such a large margin. He played in 19 minutes of the game. So he wasn't really needed out there. But effective, just not needed. Then in games to follow, like St. John's, he scores 21, the team wins by 5. Against High Point, he had 10 points, 9 assists, 5 steals, and 4 rebounds. Huge. Then, against Villanova, he scores 20, the team wins by 16 in a big game with Villanova. After Villanova, Eastern Michigan, he had no points, but he had 9 assists, 5 rebounds, and 3 steals. And this is why I said he's relevant. In 33 of 34 games, Tyler Ennis was relevant. 0 points, 9 assists, 5 rebounds, 3 steals. And I remember after this game, Jim Boeheim was asked if he was worried that Tyler Ennis didn't score. And as soon as that question came up, with no disrespect to the person that asked the question by any means, I said, look at the stat sheet. 9 assists. He did score. Rebounds. He did score. Steals. He did score. Because he created possessions for Syracuse. And he knows how to find his teammates. So Tyler Ennis didn't have any points. But he did. And that's where the stat sheet doesn't always tell you the whole truth of the game. After Eastern Michigan against Miami, he had 10 and a 5-point victory to go with 7 assists and 3 steals. Again, at Virginia Tech, he had 13 points and 7 assists in a 20-point win. So look at that. 13 points, 7 assists in a 20-point win. You see how those points, even when he's not scoring, those assists help get Syracuse over the hump. Against North Carolina, 10 points, 7 assists, 4 rebounds, and a 12-point victory. At Boston College, he scored 12. The team won by 10. And this is somebody who throughout the season, it wasn't Tyler Ennis is a great scorer. It's more of, well, what's Tyler Ennis doing? Is he scoring enough? But when you break down the numbers, I don't think he got respect for what he did. Full respect for what he did. Granted, he scored and people knew that he was scoring because they knew when he wasn't, but this is a guy who had an impact on the game. First person impact, second person impact. And what I mean by that is first person, he scored. Second person, for the steals, the rebounds, and the assists, he helped the team win the game. Look at Pittsburgh. He had 16. Team won by 5. That was a home game against Pittsburgh. At Miami, scored 14. Team won by 12. So there's a theme going on here. That he's scoring the points that are getting Syracuse over the hump. At Wake Forest, he had 18. Team won by 10. Duke, the first game that Syracuse ever played against Duke, which set a new record for an on-campus crowd, 35,446 people at the Carrier Dome. And I look forward to the next time Syracuse and Duke play in the Dome because I had 103 temperature and the flu the day of that game. So I had to watch that game from home. My fiance got to go to the game. Very happy she did. One of the best games Syracuse has ever played in their history, I would say, when you look back on everything. One of the best games, 91-89 overtime victory. Phenomenal game. And I watched it, but I was home with the flu. So, Syracuse, Duke, I'll be ready for you, God willing, the next time they meet up in the Dome. But looking at that game, 14 points, 9 assists in a 2-point win in overtime, and so all of those points obviously matter because the team only wins by 2. But a big thing in overtime is that Syracuse was taking advantage of foul trouble for Duke and feeding the ball inside. Who was feeding Jeremy Grant inside multiple times? Tyler Ennis. So even when he's not scoring, he's very smart to get to his teammates and know where their strengths are. Notre Dame, he had 6 points. Team won by 6. And that won't be the first time that he did something like that. Clemson, 6 points, 5 assists, in a 13-point victory. At Pittsburgh, well, we know what happened in that situation. The biggest shot of Tyler Ennis' career in college, that one season, was the March Madness type shot. The Big East tournament in Madison Square Garden type shot. And that was the three-pointer that I like to call the four-pointer, where Tyler Ennis took just a few dribbles down the court and threw up a shot in between two defenders that dropped into the cylinder, and the basket hugged it for a second and dropped it down. Tyler Ennis with the four-pointer of his history. Even though it was a 3, I call it a 4 because it was pretty darn far away from the basket. Tyler Ennis' biggest shot of his career and winning at Pittsburgh, which means so much to Syracuse fans that remember the great Northeast basketball that used to be. After the Pittsburgh game, NC State, 9 points Tyler Ennis had. The team won by 1 point. And that 1 point was achieved on a 2-point basket. That 1-point differential came from C.J. Fair going to the basket before the end of the game. And who gave him the assist? Tyler Ennis. After that game, Maryland, 20 points Tyler Ennis had. Team won by 2. After that, Florida State, Tyler Ennis had 16. Syracuse won by 16. And then Syracuse went into the game against Western Michigan because we're looking at all the wins here, all of the wins that were affected by Tyler Ennis. So we fast forward to Western Michigan, their last win of the season, their 28th of the season, and that was in the NCAA tournament round of 64. Tyler Ennis had 16 points and 6 assists in the 24-point victory. Now we look at the losses. And I know this is hard for Syracuse fans, there's no Final Four. I said at the beginning of the season, before Tyler Ennis even stepped foot on campus at Syracuse University, I said, if C.J. Fair comes back with the freshmen coming in, and the Jeremy Grants and the Trevor Cooneys, Raheem Christmases, Baikitas, all being on the team already, if that all came together, then the Syracuse Orange would return to the Final Four. I said that the day after they lost to Michigan down in Atlanta. I was down in Atlanta, woke up, I sat up in bed and I said, I got something to say. And I truly believe that this team had the capability of doing it. They lost it somewhere along the way, and I believe it was up here. And fatigue. Because the talent was there. But this is a Final Four team to me. And even in the losses, Tyler Ennis as a true freshman was effective. Hence why I believe this team was so talented. And let's look at these losses. The first loss to Boston College. He had 14 points. He was the second highest scoring player on Syracuse behind C.J. Fair, who had 20. And on top of 14 points, in that loss to Boston College. Tyler Ennis also had 8 rebounds, 6 assists, in a 3-point overtime loss. So Tyler Ennis wasn't invisible in that game. It wasn't his fault that that game got out of control, got out of hand. He was there on rebounds. He was there scoring. He was there assisting in the game. In the Duke loss on the road, he had 9 points and 6 assists. We all know what happened in that game. Syracuse loses in the game to Duke, not by much, but there's a questionable block foul. Not a block foul, pardon me. The block charge dilemma where C.J. Fair was called for a charge, and you can listen to what a referee that has been in the game, in the NCAA, 40 years. I trust him. I do. Mike Kitts, NCAA referee for 4 decades. Don't miss that show that you can catch right here on wakeupcalldt.com. Make sure you get to that show. It is on the Listen In Lounge page. So you just go to the More tab on wakeupcalldt.com and scroll down to Listen In Lounge. You can listen to Mike Kitts there. You can also get Mike Kitts by scrolling through the shows on the app, the free app that you can get on the Google Play Store or on the Apple Store. It's SportsDT. And the easiest way to do it for Google is to go to the Google Play Store and type in SportsDT, all one word, SportsDT. Then if you want it for any Apple product, your iPod, your iPad, your iPhone, go to this website, wakeupcalldt, all one word, wakeupcalldt.podbean, podbean.com/mobile, MOBILE. That's wakeupcalldt.podbean.com/mobile. That will take you right to the app, and then you can download it for free there. So a free app to all. Make sure you listen to Mike Kitts. He had his opinions on the questionable call with C.J. Fair and how he looks at the call and how the NCAA has wanted refs to look at the call in the past as compared to how they want them to look at the call now, which could be causing some of these issues with making the right call, at least in my mind. So don't miss out on Mike Kitts that you can get on wakeupcalldt.com's Listen In Lounge page and on the free app. And that all connects to that play with C.J. Fair, where it looked like C.J. wasn't leaning into him. I look for the body. I look for the elbow. I look for, that lean that you're going after the player, or maybe you're a little bit out of control and the player's set. And I don't think that was the case, but that happens. Syracuse doesn't get the points. They don't go to the free throw line. Boeheim gets kicked out of the game, and then all of a sudden there's free free throws. Free free throws, there you go. A double positive. I know they said a double negative negates itself. A double positive, I think, makes the world a better place. So the free free throws and then the possession after that. So that truly lost the game. Tyler Ennis did some work here in this game. I think it was taken away from Syracuse a little bit, impartially, and honestly, I do believe that. And you know that whatever I'm going to say to you is impartial, and it's how I feel. Because people say, well, Dan, you grew up in Syracuse, New York. Of course you thought that foul was a block on Duke and not a charging foul on Syracuse. It's like, no. If I was watching Duke in North Carolina, I would say that was a questionable call. If I was watching Baylor in Minnesota, I would think that that's a questionable call. If I was watching Michigan State and Michigan, I would think it was a questionable call. It was. And Tyler Ennis did some work in this game, but the team came up just a little bit short, and it had a lot to do with those extra shots that come from a double technical, because then it's not a one-possession game. Now it's broken out to more than that and out of the reach of Syracuse with the time that was on the clock. After that game, Syracuse played Virginia, and Tyler Ennis tied C.J. Fair for the highest score for Syracuse with 13. So the team lost. It was the worst loss of the season as far as the point total that they lost by to Virginia, who went on to win the ACC regular season title and the tournament title, and was a 1 seed in the NCAA tournament and won a couple games there. So not losing to a bad team by any stretch of the imagination at all. They lose that game, but Tyler Ennis was right there with CJ Fair as the team's leading scorer with 13 points. And this is something that you'll see in the losses with Syracuse as we move ahead here, is that Tyler Ennis and CJ Fair were doing work, but there was no third scorer. There was nobody to bridge the gap. And it wasn't Tyler Ennis' fault, and it wasn't CJ Fair's fault, but I think it was put on them at times, and I definitely know it was put on Tyler Ennis from people that I talked to in the community of Cuse Nation, Orange Nation fans, whatever you call yourself. Syracuse fans were very upset with Tyler Ennis, but if you look at the numbers, and that's why we're going down the line here to look at the history of what Tyler Ennis did, it's my way of justifying my opinion that Tyler Ennis was pretty much nothing but good for the Syracuse Orange. After that game, Georgia Tech, one of two Syracuse players to reach double figures with CJ Fair. Again here, CJ Fair, Tyler Ennis, but nobody else really helping out. He ended with 18 points in a 5-point loss, and the Orange didn't have Jeremy Grant. It was the only game that they didn't have him at all. The only game that Jeremy Grant sat out of. Before that, he played 13 minutes against Maryland, 13 minutes against Virginia. That was a big effect to the team. So, not Tyler Ennis. If you take Jeremy Grant off of the Syracuse Orange team, it's going to change the team. And that's what it did when they played FSU. You put Jeremy Grant in the game, Tyler Ennis scored 16, which bridged the gap. But you can also argue that Jeremy Grant bridged the gap too, because he scored 16. So, Syracuse, in these games, needed Tyler Ennis, but they needed somebody else besides Tyler Ennis and CJ Fair. And against Georgia Tech, they didn't have Jeremy Grant, so that definitely affected the team. And then against NC State in the ACC tournament, not Tyler Ennis' fault here. He had 21 points in a 3-point loss. The shot just wasn't going in. You talk about iron unkind. Is what they call the basketball hoop when the shots aren't going in. This wasn't iron unkind. This was when you have, I have a nickname for Tyler Ennis that I'll talk about in a moment here, but this was the opposite of my nickname for Tyler Ennis. You know when you put two magnets together, but you flip them on their sides and they repel each other? That's exactly what this game was. I'm sitting courtside down in Greensboro at the Greensboro Coliseum, looking at the far basket and watching Syracuse heave, try again, and it's not going in. The basket did not want that ball. It didn't want the ball. And it's funny to me because against NC State, Syracuse won by a point at home, 56-55. And in that game, NC State, there was the question of were they fouled? Should they have gone to the free throw line? So a game just like where Duke was, when Syracuse played at Duke, many can argue, as I have, that the game was stolen from Syracuse in a lot of ways. And the NC State game, you can argue that as well against Syracuse. So NC State wins this game, and I do truly believe that there is a writing of paths. So that game, when the ball wasn't falling at the end with 20 seconds on the clock, that was the game where it was like, okay, you know what, NC State should have won the first game. They should have been at the free throw line at least and had the opportunity. So now this game is going to go to NC State. But not Tyler Ennis' fault, 21 points and a 3-point loss. And then finally against Dayton in the round of 32 in the NCAA tournament, in front of a lot of hometown fans in Buffalo, and by hometown, I mean state of New York, pretty much anywhere. I mean, Syracuse had fans in Hawaii when they were playing in the Maui Invitational and won it. So you really can't go anywhere in the world and not find somebody wearing orange, and I found that out over my lifetime, is that if somebody knows that I'm from Syracuse, basketball team, it's the first thing I hear. Dinosaur barbecue, from a little bit, you get that, you get some dinosaur barbecue. But 99.99999% of the time I say I'm from Syracuse, they're like, oh, Jim Boeheim, Tyler Ennis, Carmelo Anthony, Michael Carter-Williams. Oh, Pearl Washington, John Wallace, Cuse in the house, oh my God. People know. They know. And what they should know is that Tyler Ennis, as I included him in that, should be included. Against Dayton, yes, he didn't take the best shot in the world. Should have gone in. He had gone inside all throughout the second half and told me in an interview right here on the YouTube channel, youtube.com, /WakeUpCallDT. You could check back on that interview that I had with Tyler Ennis, the end of the season interview. It's called the Orange Conclusion Series, so make sure you look out for that. That Tyler, I said to him, was it that they were giving you more lanes in the second half when you were playing Dayton, or that you weren't taking them in the first half? And he said it was a little bit of both. Well, he took the lane in the second half, but on that last jump shot, an off-balance jumper from the free throw line, as opposed to attacking the basket, getting fouled, he was making his free throws, and he was making tough shots at the rim with people contesting him, that it almost seemed that that's where he was going to go. I mean, of all places to go to the basket, he had been doing it throughout the second half. Why wouldn't you do it in that moment? And he didn't. So, do I think it was the best shot? Personally, no. But when you look back on the game and Tyler Ennis, he had 19 points in the game against Dayton. 19 in the loss to Dayton in the round of 32 for the NCAA tournament. He had 17 of his 19 points in the second half. He was 1 point shy of tying Syracuse's entire first half in the second half. Syracuse as a team had 18 points in the first half against Dayton. Tyler Ennis had 17 in the second half. So to blame the game on him, to blame the season on him, to say that he ruined it, is to not really look at the numbers, which is why I'm looking at the numbers with you right now. Because they need to be looked at. Because Tyler Ennis, even in losses, was a factor, positively. He had his place in 33 of 34 games, which is a lot more than you would expect from freshmen around the country. So, my hat's off to Tyler Ennis. I know that he's had great effort, and I appreciate the effort that he's had for any team that he would have played for. This is a guy that wasn't talked about enough, and he should have been. Julius Randle, getting talked about on Kentucky. Jabari Parker. I was thinking Parker, I said Palmer. I was thinking of Carson Palmer. Too close. So, Jabari Parker of Duke and Andrew Wiggins of Kansas. You hear about all three of those guys all season long. But I'll tell you something that was different with those guys than with someone like Tyler Ennis. They lose. They lost games. Score 30 points, lost the game. Tyler Ennis in 33 of 34 games was relevant. And I'm not saying Parker, Wiggins, or Randall were irrelevant. I'm saying that if you're going to look at them and going to say, these guys are great, well then, why did Duke get bumped out by Mercer in the first round of the NCAA tournament? Why did that happen? Then you look at a team like Kansas with Andrew Wiggins that wasn't a strong 2 seed, and I knew that. And they had a terrible record against unranked teams. When they were playing unranked, when they had losses during their season, you look and say, okay, well, half the losses in the regular season came against ranked, the other half came against unranked teams. So it was kind of the same there. We play the top 25 as Kansas, and we're going to lose a few games. We're going to play unranked teams, we're going to lose against them too. Not a strong 2 seed. I didn't think they should have been a 2 seed, but they were a 2 seed, and they end up not going that far in the tournament, nor does Duke go far in the tournament. And the only team you can really argue for is Julius Randle with Kentucky because of the effort that they've made and where they've gone. But Tyler Ennis, definitely relevant in these games. And so I give him a lot of credit and respect him for everything that he's done for the Syracuse Orange. And when you look forward in his career, do I think this was the right time to leave? No, I don't. I think Tyler Ennis left too soon. I wouldn't want to leave on my last-second shot not going in. But he can leave in the sense that he made a last-second shot against Pittsburgh. He can leave in the fact that Syracuse would have never had 28 wins without him, would have never had their best start in the history of Syracuse basketball. And when we talk about history, we're talking about Billy Owens, Derek Coleman, Sherman Douglas, Dave Bing, Carmelo Anthony, John Wallace, all of those guys. Pearl Washington, if I didn't say that before. We're talking about all of them. Ronnie Cycli. And still, the best start ever was with Tyler Ennis as a true freshman point guard. So will he be missed? That's an understatement. You can answer that question. He will be missed. But was this the right time? I don't think so. I think Tyler should have been there for his second year. I think him coming back for his second year, knowing that C.J. Fair's gone and Baikita's gone. Now, Baikita didn't give a lot of points to the team, but Baikita gave so much more, and that's another story for another day. So is C.J. Fair. But with Fair gone, you look at a lot of these games where it was C.J. Fair and Tyler Ennis scoring. Now you have neither. So you have to make up for all those points. When Syracuse is scoring 62 points and 40 of them are coming from C.J. Fair and Tyler Ennis, you have to make up for that. And if Jeremy Grant isn't there, then what are you going to do in that case? So a lot of pressure goes on Caleb Joseph coming in to lead Syracuse for 2014-2015 as the third straight, for all intents and purposes, to call him a true freshman point guard, because he is, Tyler Ennis was, and before that was obviously Michael Carter-Williams, because as a true freshman didn't really play that much and never had the point. So now they look to Caleb Joseph as Tyler Ennis looks to the NBA draft. I hope the best for him. I want the best for him. But longevity is the key to the NBA, because you can be forgotten very, very quick. And another season would have done him a lot of good. But as you can see from today's Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora show, everything that he did for Syracuse did a lot of good for everyone that's proud to wear orange and blue every single day of the year. I'm Dan Tortora, and I'd like to thank Carvel DeWitt, Pole Position Raceway, Dry-Sig Apparel, Dry-Sig Lady, Fanhands.com, Honda City Syracuse, and everyone that's ever been a part of the show, as well as Salt City Billiards. And as you can see, I have family here in the background. So sitting here with you, talking with you today about Tyler Ennis, and I thank the Dan Tortora Broadcast Media family for making this possible in the first ever Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora broadcast audio and video show. God bless, take care, and I'll talk to you soon.